Welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations, a series of short and shareable conversation starters for those of us who have or love and support people with a complicated and beautiful brain. Here's your host, Angela Geddes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Kitchen Table Conversations. I'm your host, Angela, and thanks once again for tuning in today. This week, we are acknowledging a pretty important day. World Mental Health Day is observed every year on October the 10th. And this year's theme, as shared by the World Health Organization, is simple but very powerful. Mental health is a universal human right. So you can read more about this important initiative on the WHO website. So I encourage you all to check into my website and get a direct link, or just do a Google search yourself. But I do think it's really important to acknowledge this day and to really take time to reflect on why this day is important and why it matters. Firstly, to start, I think, some people might be shocked to know that it's estimated that 1 in 7 people worldwide live with a mental disorder. That's over 1.1 billion people, each with a unique story, a family, and a community. And mental health challenges can disrupt work, can interfere with relationships, can impede on our ability to experience joy and peace and contentment. But they don't necessarily define a person's worth or their potential. And as the WHO reminds us, effective prevention and treatment options do exist. Yet most people still don't have access to proper care, and we all need to do a little bit more in this area to make sure that there are fewer wrong doors for people. And part of that, changing that reality, starts here at our kitchen tables by talking openly, compassionately, and most importantly, accurately about what mental health really is. So we all experience stress, sadness, and anxiety from time to time. Most of us have experienced a post-trauma response as well. And these are all part of being human. But when the symptoms become persistent, chronic, and begin to interfere with daily life for longer periods of time, it may be a signal that something more serious needs our attention and medical attention at that. It's important to remember, and I say this often in my work, we shouldn't be relying on TikTok trends or pop psychology alone to label ourselves or others. Overdiagnosing can unintentionally minimize the legitimate struggles of those living with complex, lifelong mental health conditions. I tell you, I hear the word narcissist so often now, everywhere in my practice, online, in normal conversations. People are taking it upon themselves to assume that they can diagnose or label somebody because they happen to be acting fairly selfishly. But there's more to it than that, right? And diagnosing is above my pay grade, and it certainly is above most people who are throwing that term around. So we need to be really careful around that, because mental health conditions are real and they are legitimate and they are challenging for the people who experience them. So being inclusive and affirming matters deeply, and allowing for conversations like that to take place and using proper terminology is important. So I'm not here to stifle conversations, but we need to be careful and refer people within our circle and around our own kitchen tables back to their medical providers if they have questions around mental wellness and mental health. Being inclusive and affirming and open matters deeply. But for the many people that I see, their symptoms to them are not necessarily a superpower. They're not something to be celebrated necessarily, but they are daily challenges that deserve evidence-informed treatment, compassion, and long-term support, not quick fixes or solely online advice. So here are some of the WHO's most recent facts about global mental health. So nearly 1 in 7 people live with a mental disorder. Anxiety and depressive disorders are the most common. Effective treatments exist, but most people don't receive them, and a lot of people are misdiagnosed. So these effective treatments are not working because sometimes there's more to the story, which if you've been following me, you understand that complex neurodevelopmental conditions often have overlapping characteristics. And stigma and discrimination remain major barriers. They still do, despite how much progress we've made. Some of the most recognizable conditions include, as mentioned, anxiety disorders, which affect over 359 million people globally, depression, with 280 million people living worldwide with this condition, bipolar disorder impacts 37 million people, PTSD, often following traumatic or life-threatening events, schizophrenia affecting 23 million individuals, and eating disorders and neurodevelopmental disorders such as ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. So you will notice that I didn't mention FASD. But when we talk about mental health, I didn't mention FASD because it wasn't mentioned on the World Health Organization page for mental disabilities or mental health conditions. But when we talk about mental health, we also need to talk about prenatal health. And to me, on this page, there is a missing link that could really contribute in a positive way to prevention and preventing further instances of prenatal alcohol-exposed pregnancies, and also preventing the impact of people who are living with prenatal alcohol exposure and the effects of which. So there's growing evidence linking early developmental differences and exposures, especially prenatal alcohol and substance exposure, to lifelong mental health and behavioral challenges, symptoms of a condition that's often misdiagnosed and misunderstood. And yet this connection is still rarely mentioned in large-scale mental health campaigns or fact sheets. We can't prevent what we refuse to acknowledge. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD, remains one of the most under-recognized yet common developmental conditions worldwide, more common than autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy, Tourette syndrome combined. And many individuals with FASD struggle not only with learning and self-regulation, but also with anxiety, depression, impulsivity, and trauma-related symptoms. So as we reflect on Global Mental Health Day, let's widen the lens to include prevention and early intervention, because that's where hope and healing begin. Music has always been one of the most powerful ways to express what words sometimes can't in simple conversation. I do want to take a moment to share that music is a huge part of my life. For people who know me personally, you know that I'm married to a very talented country music artist and musician. And his family members are outstanding, and our country music family continues to leave me in awe with their creativity and their talents. So I want to share a couple of songs that speak directly to mental wellness and something that maybe will provide some people who are experiencing some of these symptoms some comfort and a sense of understanding and belonging. So I do want to take a moment to share a couple of songs that beautifully capture what it feels like to live with some of the hidden struggles, or live with somebody else who's experiencing some of these struggles, and what people have to do sometimes in terms of putting on a brave face, but still longing for understanding. So there's one song called Open a Window, and that was written and performed by Jamie Warren. And then there's another one, a new release from Jessie T, which is called I'm Fine. A short music clip from her lyrics include, "When you ask me if I'm okay, I hope you believe me when I say I'm fine." And there's another line in there that says, "On any given day, it's just often too much to unpack." So these lyrics sort of hit home for so many, because behind the I'm fine, there are often layers of exhaustion, pain, and the quiet wish that someone would just sit beside them, listen, and open a window to let a little light in. So thank you, Jamie Warren, and thank you, Jessie T, for sharing your voices, your vulnerability, and your commitment to this important conversation around mental health. So if you or someone you know is struggling, please know that help exists and healing is possible. Talk to someone you trust. Sometimes the first step is just saying the words out loud. Reach out to your healthcare provider. Evidence-based treatments, including therapy and medication, can really make a difference. as can getting outside, being more in touch with nature, eating properly, being mindful of what we take into our bodies, taking moments to breathe and to exercise and to incorporate mindful movement of some sort. Prioritize connections. Social support is one of the strongest predictors of recovery. Move your body, rest your mind, and nourish yourself. Simple self-care can support the nervous system and improve resilience. And remember, not all symptoms mean illness. Life is complicated. Our emotions reflect our humanity. But when symptoms persist or interfere with daily life, reach out. Don't wait until things get worse. If you want something to be different, sometimes we have to be prepared to do things differently. With many thanks, Angela.